Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Dirk Pinnick. Some of you might know me because I'm an expert of healthcare and safety management. I have been working together with some people of you in some different exercises and workshops. Nice to be here today. Nice to open the Global Safety Days 2017. And today we want to talk a little bit about risk management, and we want to talk about personal health care management. Mr. Hümke had this nice intro for us, so maybe we can give you some answers or some ideas. How can we avoid accidents? How can we lower down our risk of injury in the everyday life? And especially for us, how can we improve our skills to stay healthy? To answer these questions, we invited an expert in extreme sports. So let us welcome Chris. Come on the stage. Hello again.
Thank you, everyone. I thought I'd start off by saying something a little bit cheesy, that I'm no stranger to danger, but it is true. As a child, I used to always get in trouble off my mum. I'd be swinging through the trees like Tarzan. I'd be jumping from my house like Superman because I thought I could fly, and I'd be playing in the drains like Aquaman. Mum, she'd always be yelling at me, and I'd be like, oh, but he made me do it, and she made me do it. And she said to me, well, if such and such made you jump off a cliff, would you? It turns out I would. So let's fast forward 20 years, 20 years in the sport, and ask yourself this: why am I still alive? After 20 years of doing extreme sports, especially base jumping, which is known as one of the most extreme sports in the world, why am I still here? And I ask myself that question nearly every day. So most people will say it's luck. And of course, yes, there's an element of luck. Not so much for me in base jumping, but in everyday life. But most of all for me, it's been about risk management. So today I'm just going to go over a few of the key reasons why I'm still alive after all these years, nearly 7,100 skydives and nearly 4,000 base jumps with very minimal injuries. And just talk about the reasons why I'm still alive doing extreme sports, but how it can relate back to not only the workplace, not only other extreme sports, but just life in general. So first of all, we're going to get this one out of the way, and that's luck. Okay? There is an element of luck in everything we do. Luck is really, really important. I've had a few lucky calls in base jumping, but over the years in life, I've been very lucky. When we start skydiving, we have a saying, and it's called the jar of skill and the jar of luck. So it's a bit cliche, but when we start skydiving, we start with a full jar of luck and an empty jar of skill. And the idea is to build up that jar of skill without using too much luck. Now, the most important thing is not about the fact you're being lucky. For me, it's about recognizing luck and analyzing luck and having an understanding of luck. So whenever I've had to dip into the jar of luck, I recognize it, I put the lid back on the jar of luck, analyze it, and then try and continue my journey of building up my skill. So you can only get lucky for so long if you don't keep working on your skill. So as a good example, if you cross the road without looking, 99 times you're going to be fine. Only takes that one time. And in base jumping, one time could be fatal for us. So the most important thing is to identify luck and use it to your advantage. The scariest type of people are people that try and fly blind and don't have an understanding of their surroundings. That's quite scary because they're not only endangering themselves, they're endangering possibly you. And it's really, really important to just have an awareness of when you are lucky and use that to your advantage. So if you ever find yourself lucky, put the lid back on and go and walk away, which I often do. I'll walk away from jumps and just go and analyze everything and work on building up that jar of skill. Secondly, I just want to talk about general safety. Okay, it's something that gets thrown around all the time, but in our sport it's crucial, like everything I'm going to talk about today. And when I talk about safety, I'm not talking about sitting in a padded room and dying of boredom, because that sucks. I'm still saying get out there and have a go. So for me, it's mostly extreme sports. But the whole point of living, in my opinion, is to have fun. And you can't have fun if you're hurt or killed. So over the years, I've developed a very big awareness of just general safety. Not just my safety, the safety of people around me and the safety of my surroundings. It's really, really important because any accident, and I'll talk about this a few times over the talk, any accident doesn't just affect you, it affects everybody around you. It affects an event, it affects a company, it affects insurance companies, and then 50 years down the track, it affects people even more. So we're just going to talk about general safety by using this example here, which is a base jumping competition we have in Benidorm, Spain. Before I go and do a jump, a lot of people think, oh, he's crazy and he just goes and jumps off stuff. Well, it's not true at all. But I have to analyze everything before I do a jump. So for my general safety in this place, if I want to hit this target here, which is quite small, I have to first check my gear, make sure I'm safe, my gear and my parachute opens correctly, otherwise I'm not going to hit the target at all, I'll just hit the ground. I've got to make sure that the weather is good, both where I'm jumping from and on the ground. I've got to make sure my surroundings are good, and as you can see there's pools, there's chairs, there's people, there's another pool, there's trees, there's everything. And then I have to lastly check my mindset and make sure, am I okay to jump today? Because every day's a new day. And some days, I come to work and I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling onto it today. So we still have to go to work, but you be very aware of your surroundings and maybe not push yourself that day. But it's only once I feel good in every single aspect of that I can actually go and make a jump to hit the target. 10 seconds, please.
10 segundos.
Okie dokie. Ready, steady, spaghetti. So for me, it's all about the preparation before the jump that creates the jump itself. And if you have a look here, some of these guys maybe could have prepared a little bit more.
Let it fly.
So for me, by being aware of my surroundings and having an understanding, if I don't hit the target, I risk either hurting myself or hurting someone else, which could stop the competition and stop future competitions. So for me, safety equals winning. So it sounds cliche, but you can only have fun if you're safe. And the best way for me to be safe is through preparation and visualization equals prevention. So this is really critical for me. It's not just about doing something and hoping it all works out and dealing with it if something does go wrong. It's all about everything beforehand. I fly parachutes for a living. I've probably got over 14,000 parachute flights of various types. I teach skydiving and I teach base jumping. And everything comes down to preparation. We're an extreme sport of base jumping. If you want to become a good skater and skate the mega ramp, you have to train just to get to that point, and you're going to get hurt along the way. But if you want to base jump, you can simply just jump off a cliff. And most of the time, it's actually going to be fine. It's the simplest of extreme sports. But when it does go wrong, it goes horribly wrong. And that's why we always have a lot of preparation. And the best way to do it is through visualization. For me, preparation is everything. I don't prepare for if my parachute opens correctly or if it flies correctly. Most of the time it will. That's what it's designed to do. But sometimes it doesn't, and that's what I prepare for. And the best way to prepare for something like that is through visualization. Now, it's scientifically proven that your brain does not know the difference between visualizing something and actually doing something, which is awesome. You can even think of it like daydreaming. I'm a big daydreamer. I was never really good at school. I always daydreamed and visualized all the cool things I was going to do as soon as I left school. And that's the best way to actually prepare yourself for anything that can happen. So when we're skydiving, we'll actually visualize from my point of view, my opposite's point of view, and also the cameraman's point of view. So you get an all-round perspective of everything. And it is visualization that has actually saved my life a few times. So on this video, you'll see after 15 years in the sport, my parachute finally opened the wrong way. So I did all this prevention by packing it right and did everything right, but at the end of the day, you're throwing fabric and strings into the air at high speeds and sort of 1% hoping for the best. But by visualizing all the things that could go wrong, every single time I opened my parachute for 15 years, I was able to get out of this next situation. Fucking hell, that's close. Closest I've ever come. Woo. That was nasty. Well, that was my first 160. Thought I was going to hit then. And good reaction time. Pretty intense. That's the cliff. Woo. Shaking a little bit. All good though. So that actually could have been a fatal situation. It wasn't too major, but I've had friends pass away purely because they haven't dealt with that in time and have hit the cliff. And it can either work out or it can't. But the best way is to not find out. And that is through preparation and visualization, and it equals prevention. You can never be prepared enough in anything, and it really is. Even after 20 years, I still go through the process pretty much every single day. And my whole life revolves around fun, so I don't like stuff if it's not fun. So I make it fun. So I just call it daydreaming. And that way you can actually have a good time with it and get creative as well. Next we're going to talk about the band KISS, and we're going to use the KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm no Albert Einstein, and I never went to university, and I never finished school, and English is my only language, and I'm not even very good at that. So I just try and keep everything very, very simple. Our sport of base jumping is very, very simple. It's simple to do and has simple consequences. So by keeping all my safety checks short and simple and precise, you're actually allowing a better chance of preparation and visualization, which equals prevention. So in my 20 years of experience, I have broken one hairline fracture of my little toe in nearly 4,000 jumps. And it literally is by keeping everything simple because I'm stupid, is the way I like to look at it. So another way to say it is be smart about being dumb. So remember the KISS theory? Super, super important. Keep it simple, stupid. Never think you're smarter than you are. So, and that brings me to the next point, which is continuity and consistency. This is huge. In the next video, I apologize for the swearing. I tried to bleep out as much as I could. This guy is the head cardiologist for the royal family of Saudi Arabia. I kid you not. And I hope they don't have bad hearts because they're in trouble. He was so focused on his cameras and he was so focused on something he wanted to do that he actually forgot about all his safety checks. This guy had a wife and kids. This guy was going to die right in front of all my students, and he was going to ruin the careers of 10 of our instructors because the bridge would have got shut down. So it's quite famously known on YouTube at the moment as the leg straps video. I've shortened it up a little bit for you today, but
yesterday evening, as a reward for my students, I get them to do unpacked jumps if they want. So we go out and we do a tard, and if the weather's good, we can do a rollover. So we're a bit late for the rollover, but we did a tard, and it was perfect conditions for a rollover. And this random jumper came out, rushing out to do a tard, realised some of us were doing rollovers, and quickly changed and do a rollover, and he had clearly no idea what he was doing. I look after my students, they're fine, they all do great. And then this guy just throws his gear over like he's going to do a rollover. And I'm like, oh God, he has no idea what he's doing. But I'm still getting my students sorted out. He climbs over the railing. I'm like, righto, he's going. Climbs over, he's about to jump, and then I notice he's got no leg straps on whatsoever. And I caught him within about 1.5 seconds of him jumping straight to his death. There's no way around it. If he had jumped off that object, he was going to die. The whole reason for doing this sport is to minimize the risk and do it as safe as possible. Do you know what the first words he said to me? When I said, stop, stop, stop. He's like, oh, is my GoPro not on? Really? Come on.
Watch out, stop, 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 stop. F me. Get the f back over the bridge. You've got no f***ing leg straps on, you f***ing idiot. Jesus Christ. Fucking go home. Get off this f***ing bridge today. Jesus Christ. That's one of the most retarded f***ing things I've ever seen. Don't jump tonight. You're not, oh my God. Jesus f***ing Christ.
Now you know what the language of Australian sounds like. He ended up jumping and he ended up landing in a tree and his whole brain was offset and he thought that really there was no problem. That is a big problem. If you look on this picture, he has no leg straps on. That is 100% death. There was no doubt about it. My students were all landed safely 20 feet from where he would have impacted. So, continuity and consistency. It's very, very simple. Again, our sport is simple. I do a triple check. I call it the triple check. I'll check my gear before I put it on, make sure everything's perfect. I'll check my gear once it's on to make everything's perfect, make sure everything's perfect. And then I'll check my gear again before I jump. I'm renowned for checking my gear over and over again, the exact same way. And I teach my students the same thing. Leg straps, chest strap, pilot chute, helmet. It's not that hard. You can turn it into a mantra or a song or something like this, but it's absolutely critical, especially in our sport, but in everything, to have continuity and consistency. It's no different really to putting a seatbelt on before you get in the car. What do you do when you get in the car, especially these days because of the beeps? You put your seatbelt on before you start. And it's the same thing for us, but ours can be critical. Brings me to the next thing called trust. And I'm not sure if you guys all work together or you work in separate areas, but for me, it's really, really important to have trust.
Here, he's coming.
Now, that probably won't happen to you at work. But again, you don't just risk something like that without building trust first. So for us, we had a skydiving team for about 8 years. And that was our pilot for 8 years, and he was also a member of our skydiving team. So it took a long time to build that sort of trust. We jumped together, we trained together, we partied together. We can actually speak to each other without speaking. And that's what trust is all about. So, you know, not just with your partners at home, but with your work colleagues, with your friends, especially in what we do, we have to look after each other's back every single day. Just like that leg straps guy. If I wasn't there looking out for him, he would have died. So it's really important, no matter how small the situation or how extreme the situation is to at least slowly start to build trust with your colleagues. Because one day, you might have their backs or they might have yours. And for us, it just takes one moment in time to change everything. And even for you guys, just one thing that goes wrong, if you don't have trust, if you don't have each other's backs, it could go horribly wrong. So this brings me to another point, which is called know your ego, know your limits, sorry, which I also call ego. So for me, it's an absolutely crucial part of my life. As a young man, you don't really know your limits you're pushing, and especially for young men, the ego thing is just human nature. When doing dangerous things, or in life in general, I try and commit 100%. 100%. But that doesn't mean running at 100%. Running at 100% is actually dangerous. So in general, in life, I'll run at 70% of what I'm capable of. And in base jumping these days, I run at about 30 to 50% of what I'm actually capable of. Because at some stage in life, or in my sport, you need to spike. If you're running constantly at 100%, that's when accidents happen, and that's when you have no margin for error. So for me, it's committing 100%, but not running at 100%. So in this next video, and 100% for me, or 70% for me, sorry, might be different to 70% for you guys. So it's really important to know your limits, not someone else's limits. I have friends out there that do mind-blowing things, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. There's no way. It's because I know my limits. So, and for me, this next video is me nice and relaxed, running at about 50%.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Let's have a good one. Ready, steady, spaghetti. Oh yeah, that was cool. Nice exit. Cruising around the corner here. Okay, diving down now. Oh yeah. Woo, yeah. Okay, we're going to transport over here. Fly over this ledge. Nice and high, nice and cruising. Oh yeah. Look at that, beautiful. Okay, pass under this tree. Let's dive down on this thing. Oh yeah. Nice and fast there. Beautiful. Go nice and gliding now. Good speed. Hit the last ledge. Bang. Turn a sharp turn out. Nice. And just cruising into the open field. Keep it super steep. Such a beautiful day. Super high here. Okay, flare out. Oh, big flare there. Concentrate. Big long pitch. Parachute's open. That was pretty rad. Got that sorted. Woo-hoo-hoo. Happy days.
So for me, there's a huge difference also between rushing something and being efficient in something. So generally, if you're rushing, you're running at 100%. But if you're efficient, you're committing at 100%. And to do this, we need confidence. So the tricky part with what we did, and I learnt this the hard way through competition, was not to mistake confidence with arrogance. So when I use the word ego, it's confidence and arrogance. We need ego. It's a huge part of our sport and our lives. We need confidence to succeed. But if you walk that line between confidence and overconfidence, which is arrogance, that's when things can go wrong. So these guys, you see that little fella there? I think that's overconfidence. So it's really, really important to know your limits. In my sport and my job, I have no hesitation in saying something to someone if they're being arrogant or overconfident, because it might just save their lives. And sometimes for me, it has saved their lives. It's also saved my life when people have told me. So at work or even at home, don't be afraid to say something to someone and say, look, you're a bit overconfident here. Take a chill pill or change tasks or do something else. Which also leads me to complacency. So for me, this is actually one of the biggest killers in my sport. Over the last 5 years, I've lost many, many experienced friends to complacency. So the two biggest killers for us are not knowing your limits and complacency. So for me, I feel the most normal when I'm up there. I don't feel normal here. This is weird. I feel normal when I'm up in the sky, but that's not normal. It's actually, to most of you guys, it's probably a little bit crazy. So for us, we have to recognize the fact that what we do is not normal. Now, after 20 years, it really does seem normal to me. If I'm not in the air, I feel a bit funky. But every single time I go for a flight or a jump or a skydive or anything, I always make sure that I understand that this is not normal, this is a bit crazy, and it can kill me. And here's a classic example. The thing you see up there, that's called a pilot chute. It's essential to open the rest of the parachute. It's a very simple system, but it is essential to have. Now, one of my best friends and one of the most experienced base jumpers in the world got complacent, didn't do his checks, and actually forgot to put it on. So again, preparation and visualization equals prevention. Triple checks, prevention. Complacency, bad. So basically, him and his friend jumped off, and they didn't actually check the parachutes of each other, and he only recognized this when it was time to open his parachute. So in this case, he was very, very lucky. He managed to panic and pull out his bridle and just grab with his hands and pull out anything he could, and he opened his parachute in about 3-4 seconds before he hit the ground. So in this case, he was super lucky, but it's really important not to be complacent. Now, the example I use for this is when people tell me I'm crazy. And it may be true a little bit, but define crazy. Before I go for a base jump, I'll check everything that can go wrong around me, including my gear, the weather, my mindset, everything. But when you get in your car to go to work each morning, do you go around your car and check every part of your car that's going to potentially kill you? No. Do you think about every scenario that's going to happen as you drive to work with you, your car, and other people and their cars? No. Why? It's normal. But you've got to think about it. Nothing is normal. So when you drive home tonight, just spend 1 second, 2 seconds, just have a think about your car and your safe journey home. That's complacency. Sometimes the most simplest of things can be the most dangerous because it's normal. So for me, I always recognize that while I think what I do is normal, it's not normal. The best way for me to not be complacent, and I'm world renowned for it, is fear. So you're not really scared when you get in your car to drive home because it's normal, but I recognize what I do is dangerous, and I'm very, very scared of it. I deal with fear nearly every day of my life. Whether it be in a situation like this, talking to people, or jumping off a cliff or out of a helicopter or something like that, I'm really, really scared. I'm known as a very scared person, even though it will never look like it on a YouTube video or something like this. The most important thing is to use fear as your friend. So you can have negative fear in which you panic and that will just cause more problems, or you can have positive fear in which you can actually slow time down and deal with everything as it comes, if it comes. And again, it still comes back to preparation and visualization. So when I'm on a cliff like this, and it's literally every single time for me is the same. It doesn't change. That's the beauty of our sport. I'm scared shitless. Sometimes my legs are shaking. I'm freaking out. I've got sweaty palms. That's good. That's fear. That's what's keeping me alive. Without fear, I would have died 20 years ago, probably 40 years ago. But when I go through my checks, make sure my gear's good, make sure the weather's good. Most importantly, make sure my mindset is good. You know, my gut, my brain, my heart, everything. Then the only thing I'm actually scared of is fear itself. And by knowing my limits and not being complacent, fear is my best friend. If something's not right, just like anything, I will stop and I will walk away. And I've walked away hundreds of times. When I teach my students, I actually teach them how to walk away because the jumping stuff's easy. But to walk away takes so much more inside than to just be like, oh, just go and jump and be all ego and bravo and that. It's actually harder to walk away, which actually makes it even more rewarding in the end. So if you see something with someone, stop. If you're fearful of something, that something's going to happen to yourself or someone around you, just stop. Take time out. I've seen friends get hurt or killed when they've said, just go do it. Where they could have just stopped for 1 second, taken a moment, and they were just still here today. Remember, it takes a bigger man or woman to say something to stop someone getting hurt than to just let it happen. And what I always try and remember, what I always tell people, is that no one ever got hurt by saying something. So it's really, really important. This is one for everybody because our lives are pretty much in place now. Everything's sort of been done as such, but it hasn't. You guys remember this guy? His name's Graham Bell. He invented the phone. Everyone thought he was crazy. Who has a phone here? Hands up. I expect to see every single hand, you know. So yeah, he was crazy, but now it's normal. You remember these guys, the Wright brothers? Who here's been on an aeroplane? Those guys were crazy. Without the pioneers in my sport, we'd be still jumping round parachutes, and it'd be dangerous. So whilst a lot of the pioneering is done in the majority of the way, you can still be your own pioneers. So for me, every single day I wake up and everything I do, I'm my own pioneer. I always try and think outside the box. The best inventions were from people that always thought outside the box. Now, just because you guys might have your job to do and this and that, still doesn't stop you from thinking outside the box. There may be a way to improve efficiency and safety and even make the job more fun. And that's what I do with my sport. And I've been able to pioneer that over the last 20 years to help not only make it safer, but also make it more fun and legal and more enjoyable for everyone. The best way that I do that is my next step, which is knowledge. So taking an interest. So whatever I do, I try and take an interest. Even the stuff I don't like, I try and turn it into a game. You know, I still wash dishes sometimes, and I'll try and see how quick I can get the dishes done at the bar. and things like that, you know, but you should have an understanding of everything you do in order to, one, be safe, of course, but also to be efficient and to make it fun. And this is one of the most hardcore things I've probably ever done in my life. And the only reason I was able to do it is because I took an interest. That was one of the craziest things I've ever done in my life. It's called the human slingshot, and I was the test dummy. So basically we've got 200-ton cranes, a Franna crane, 27 tons of weight, and a 14-to-1 pulley system. And by lifting the weight up about 5 foot above me and dropping it, it released the pulley system and shot us in the air at 200 kilometers an hour in about 1 second, pulling about 6 to 7 Gs. I wasn't really comfortable, but by getting an understanding of the complete system and working with the guys the whole time, I was actually able to justify it and work it out to make it sound and feel reasonably safe before I actually did it. We used sandbags to do all the testing, but at one point in time we had to do a human test. So I was a lab rat as such. But by having an understanding and taking an interest in everything, I was able to justify it. And this was the end result.
Pull, fuck! Yeah!
Yeah, buddy!
I definitely got a few grey hairs from that one, so dyed it blue. You know, another thing that we do in our sport, and it's really, really important, is commitment, okay? A bit different to girls, that's a bit scarier, but to commit in what we do is critical to our survival. So hesitation for us kills. So again, as I spoke about before, you've got to commit 100% to everything you're doing. Whether it's a shitty job or an extreme sport, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. If you've got to do it anyway, do it properly. So when I'm flying, I commit myself 100%. It takes time maybe to get to that point. So again, working at 100% is different to committing 100%. So on this next jump, it took me 5 jumps that day with a lot of training beforehand to get to this point on this section of cliff. I shortened it up because it's a lot longer. But again, it was the commitment to get to that point that got me there, not pushing it 100%. It took me 5 times to work down to get lower to the ground on this one. Committing 100% is also taking pride in your work. I take pride in what I do. I love the sports I do. It's actually taken me around the world. It's brought me here. And it's all because I committed 100% and I took pride in everything I do. I do the same thing with my students. I do my triple checks and I make sure they do their triple checks. I make sure their body, mind and soul is ready to go before each jump. And it's really, really important to commit to that first step every single time. This is a good one too, is choose the right tool for the job. You guys all have to do that, I'm sure, every day, and same for me. Happy to have a parachute, didn't work. But it's really important to choose the right tool for the job. Now for me, in the different things that I do, I have different types of wingsuits, I have different types of parachutes. Each one has a specific task that it's good for, stuff that it's okay for, and things that it's really bad for. So in my line of work, it's really, really important to choose the right tool for the job. So I use this example here, it's just not going to work. So if you choose the right tool for the job, it's going to make it safer, and it's going to make you more efficient, and that's really, really important. And it can make it fun as well. So take that extra couple of minutes, stop, and just have a look, and make sure you use the right tool for the job. So you probably hate this word, risk assessment. You probably hear it every day. I know when I worked as a carpenter for many years, and I just fall asleep when someone told me risk assessment. But risk assessment is hugely important in everyday life. Most of the time, you guys don't even think you're doing a risk assessment. You know, when you walk out that door, you're going to walk towards it. Your brain's going to say, well, I better open that door or I'll hit it with my head. It's actually a risk assessment. So what I like to use is the Swiss cheese effect. Now, we're dealing with it in a obviously a more intense environment, but risk assessments and procedures are put there for a reason. When I travel to Baffin Island or remote locations in Mexico or stuff like this, we actually have to use a risk assessment in everything we do, just to be able to jump safe. So in this instance, this is a frozen ocean. Just to walk across here would take 2 hours, just to give you an idea of the size. We had to do risk assessments on just getting there. 9-hour skidoo ride just to get there. We had to do risk assessments if there was an injury. It was going to take at least a day or 2 for rescue to come, if it came. We had to do risk assessments on the hike up in the different snow conditions and the weather. Risk assessments on the food, on where we stayed, and even risk assessments on polar bears. So for us, nothing is written down. In skydiving, we have rules and procedures in place. You have to open by this altitude for this reason. But in base jumping, we don't have that. So we have to be our own risk assessors every single day. And I like to turn everything into fun and keep it simple. So I like to use the Swiss cheese effect. And you guys can take this away with you as well, just for everyday life. And the Swiss cheese effect for us is if you fall through one hole, if you've got one small problem, that's okay. You're just going to hit the cheese. And generally, no big accidents happen because of one small problem. They happen because of many small problems. And if all those little problems happen to line up for us on one jump, it can prove fatal. So unfortunately, it's a long time ago now, but this is exactly what happened to my girlfriend, and I watched her die. She had about 4 different little problems that on their own were absolutely nothing. They would have been fine. But somehow they lined up to be one big problem. And both her parachutes didn't work and she hit the ground right in front of me. So it's really, really important to have an understanding of your risk assessments, not so much for the big problem, but for all the little problems. So I learnt this the hardest of ways. So I take into account all the small problems now. And if you see any more than one or two that could be a big issue, for me, walk away. For you guys, stop what you're doing and reassess everything. It's really simple, but it can have dire consequences. And if you look around, if you ever think about any big accidents or things on the news or whatever, it's generally a lot of small problems that come together to cause one big one. So super serious, but in our sport, it's everything. Never hesitate to walk away and reassess everything. No one's going to get you in trouble for that. And finally, the funnest bit, never stop learning. So when we're born, we start learning and we continue learning. As some people get older, they decide to stop learning. Keep learning, super fun. From my first jump 20 years ago to where I am now, I'm continuously learning. I love learning. I'm learning right now, speaking to you guys. Two of the things that stops is complacency and knowing your limits. So by continuing to learn, you're actually creating yourself a safer personal space, which breeds onto people around you and so on and so on. So for me at the moment, it's been flying in the wind tunnels, and I've just started skeleton racing as well. And you know, I like to learn mostly in the extreme sports environment, but it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're happy and smiling and you are learning stuff, you're going to be not only physically fit, more physically fit, but you're going to be more mentally fit, and you're going to be an asset to yourself and to others around you. So just to recap, everything that's kept me alive in the last 20 years is luck. Identify when you're lucky. General safety, just always be safe. It's simple and it's not that hard to do. Preparation and visualization equals prevention. KISS, super easy to remember. Keep it simple, stupid. Never think you're too smart. Okay, it'll bite you in the bum in the end. Be diligent with your continuity and your consistency. It's good to be consistent. People trust someone that's consistent. They don't trust someone that's erratic and all over the place. Make the effort to build the trust. Always know your limits in everything you do. And knowing your limits might be different each day. So use knowing your limits on a day-to-day basis, even a year-to-year basis. There's sometimes, some years I won't do some jumps because I don't feel that good about them. But then the next year I might do it 20 times. So that's really, really important. Never become complacent. It will kill you in the end. Use fear and make it your friend. It's one of my best buddies. I've been using it for 20 years and it's awesome. It saved my life many times. Think outside the box. You might not have a very creative job, but you can still think outside the box because every single one of us here is the future right now. Just because they already invented planes and telephones doesn't mean we can't work on more stuff. Arm yourself with knowledge. For me, 20 years ago, base jumping, it was more about big balls, and now it's all about big brains. So it's really important we're in the age of information, so arm yourself with knowledge. Don't fear commitment. Commit 100% to everything you do. Always choose the right tool for the job. Always do a risk assessment. It doesn't have to be written down, it doesn't have to be super formal, but I do a risk assessment up here for everything I do. And most importantly, never stop learning. At the end of the day, for me, for you guys, for everyone, the only important thing in life is to go home safe. So we can do it again tomorrow and be happy like this guy. Thank you very much.